thing on powder. Where are you? Here we are. All right. So clinical assessment. This ideographic, what that means is you're looking at the person in front of you, okay, as opposed to science, where you're looking at populations, you're looking at mean, standard deviation, confidence intervals, all that kind of stuff. This is this person in front of me, what's going on with them. You want to have all that science behind you, kind of have it as the palette that you paint with, kind of thing. That's good, but yeah, it's a person. Why are they having the symptoms? Is there something that happened now? What are the symptoms, of course? Why, and how long have they had the symptoms? Is this a new onset psychosis? Suddenly, over the past few days, have been having auditory hallucinations? Well, you might want to think about sniffing methamphetamine. Do you do that? I don't know if you can do that. Don't answer. Don't incriminate yourself. And how long or they had the ongoing psychosis since age 18, and they had prodrome before that. So that's what's going on. The DSM-5 is fairly, it's really good, actually. This is a bit of a history for you, but the DSM Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5. This is the first time it's had a Arabic number. Before this is DSM I, IV, but it went to 5. The reason for that, when this came out, by the way, this is one of those, I've been doing this for a while, stories. And when it first came out that we heard about the DSM-5, everybody's kind of going, what's with the Arabic number? What's with the Arabic number? It's just supposed to be Roman numbers. This was a Roman. Well, you can have 5.1. Okay, you can't have V.X. You can't do that. So this is they went to Arabic so you can have decimals. You don't have to. We won't have to have a DSM, XX or whatever. So large number of categories, widespread sharing of symptoms among the different diagnoses, and you have to kind of keep that in mind. And there's internalized and externalized diagnoses. This is more of a history of the DSM. So we'll cover it as we go. Now we'll cover about the developmental issues, adverse childhood effects, etc. There's different things that have been added to this. So I'm going to just kind of give you the history of this. This is a new category. Neurodevelopmental disorders is a new category. It includes autism spectrum. Asperger's syndrome Asperger's disorder is no longer there. Now, the reason Asperger's is no longer there is nobody could really agree upon what it was. Okay, Asperger's was autism with good verbal skills. Well, what's good verbal skills? So the reliability of diagnosing was not good across people. So it went away, and it's now a spectrum. There's actually different kinds of autism with verbal skills, good or bad verbal skills, intellectual disability or not. Again, that's all in there. Learning disorders like dyslexia, dyscalculia, speech disorders, and intellectual disability. It's no longer mental retardation. And you don't actually diagnose it with IQ anymore. IQ is part of it, but it's actually more function. And that's, again, we'll go through that. So if you see somebody, and you will, people are still diagnosing intellectual disabilities with IQ, intelligent quotient. That's wrong. It's like wrong. They're not kept up. Bipolar and depressive disorder are separated. They used to be just mood disorders, but they're different enough that they're separated them. And anxiety disorders are separated from OCD and PTSD, which they all were anxiety disorders before. Now, no, these are pretty different things than generalized anxiety, panic disorder, and social phobia, which are the ones for anxiety disorders. So it actually makes a lot of sense. When I was actually at a speech at a SAL conference where the guy who chaired the committee of writing the DSM-5 presented the DSM-5, and it's like all these things that he would say. So, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Mental retardation or developmental delay, neither of those actually make sense, because mental retardation means you're going and then you slow down. Like you retard automobiles somehow or another. It's a retardation. Developmental delay means you catch up. You don't do any of those. You're disabled, intellectually disabled. So it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. And OCD is very different from generalized anxiety. So it actually made a lot of sense. Again, these are more what I want to just sort of give you a history. Feeding elimination disorders, these are changed. Gender dysphoria, this is a nice political, I mean, it's not political, it's just societal. That'd be better to say societal. In the DSM-4, it was gender identity disorder. Okay. You also remember that homosexuality was a disorder in DSM-2. Okay? So is it a disorder, gender identity disorder? Well, no, it's a range of gender expression. So it's more of I feel sad about it. Euphoria means I'm feeling really good. Dysphoria means I feel sad. So it's gender dysphoria. I'm sad about my gender. You used to have substance abuse and substance dependency. So alcohol abuse and alcohol dependency. Abuse is you kept using it even though you're getting in trouble for it. Dependency is you have withdrawal. There's withdrawal syndromes and tolerance. Now they just call it substance use disorders because most everybody had both things. They had both substance abuse and substance dependency. It's like, well, why have two things when you can really just need one? And neurocognitive is dementias. So, all right, so that's a quick overview of what you're going to be looking at this entire semester. So, some assessment. I'm going to go talk about these just because they're important. You probably won't use them too much during this semester, but you will. And these two, reliability and validity. I'm going to focus a little bit on those right now. Be cognizant of the time as well. Reliability, that's really comes down to, like, say, Asperger's. Okay, so one person's Asperger's was not another person's Asperger's. Okay, so it really had very poor inter-rater reliability. So no, it's just not there. Predictive is if you make this diagnosis, will give you some clue in the future. A lot of the diagnoses we have, they're pretty predictive, especially things like schizophrenia and whatnot. We can get a pretty good idea of their prognosis. Others less so. So the childhood ones, especially if there's a very complex childhood situation with abuse and substance use in utero and abandonment and all those things that go into child psychiatry, those are less predictive because there's just so many things going on. And the same thing here, validity. We want to focus on face validity. Are these symptoms that you'll get to in the here, but also the DSM-5, which I don't have a copy in front of me. They have them here, though. They have all the DSM-5 symptoms. That's the other thing about this book you should know is all the DSM-5 symptoms are in there. This is sleep apnea, just sort of random on the choose. So that's the other thing you need to know. It's all in here. So here's panic disorder, the symptoms of panic disorder. When you're going through the cases, have this handy. Okay, have it like right here, reading, right here, reading. That's what you want to do. So, face validity, for example, with depression. One of the symptoms is you're depressed. That sounds good. So that's what those are. But again, you need to know what they are. Put them into context of clinical assessment. That's the goal here. There's some cool tests. Rorschach, semantic apperception. I keep these in here just to people know that they're there. If you want to use those in your final case, I guess I would ask you not to, because I would just have to make something up with the Rorschach. I mean, if you do, that'd be fine. But generally, we don't use these. Again, it's sort of a historical thing. They're out there. Personality inventories, MMPI is a common one. It's a way you can assess. I wanted you to know that these exist. Okay, so the next time you run across them, you'll kind of go, oh yeah, I remember this from Mun's class. And that we probably won't use them here. Self-monitoring, however, that's one that you'll use a lot. Okay, when you work with, a lot of you going to social work or in some kind of psychotherapeutic situation, you'll have them monitor symptoms quite a bit. That's a really handy technique. Turns out that if you even start monitoring your symptoms get better. just by watching them. So that's a cool thing. These can be handy. Actually, it can be quite handy. Mainly used for people who are in research settings. So say you want to see if psychotherapy X treats depression. Well, you have the Beck Depression Inventory before they start psychotherapy, do psychotherapy, and see if it actually goes down, improves as the psychotherapy goes along. So that's good for that. The DSM-5 cross-cutting measures, if you have the DSM-5, it's pretty cool to look at that. It's another. By cross-cutting, it means it looks at depressed mood, it looks at anxiety, it looks at mood instability, it looks at psychoses, has all these different symptoms not connected to a disorder. Okay, not connected to a particular disorder. Now that's a good question. Actually this is an issue within mental health in general, mental illness in general. Is should we use these diagnoses or should we look at neurocircuitry? They have an abnormality in their mesolimbic system. Their nucleus accumbens, prefrontal cortex, amygdala is underactive. Yeah, we'll probably get to that at some point, and certainly you treat symptoms. We'll get to that next semester or next week. But for now, the diagnoses work. IQ, function, intellectual disability. You don't give any lie detector tests. Probably doesn't want to help you here. But you do want to do these. Okay, you want to do these because we have the PET scans, which is never mind. Actually, it's EEG. EEGs are able to discern Alzheimer's disorder from other disorders, other dementing disorders, neurocognitive disorders. And some of these EEGs, there's some studies coming out now, and this would be like wicked cool if this pans out, that if you have a certain EEG pattern, and I don't know what it is offhand, but if you have a certain EEG pattern, it predicts if you're going to respond to this kind of antidepressant or that kind of antidepressant. Wow, that's cool. Okay, so what you do from the literature that I'm familiar with, there's a lot more literature on this, but so we're switching to science hat here. Sorry, I should actually get literal hats. I should do that. Get literal hats. You get EEG. Start a medication. If the EEG changes like within a week or two, then you can tell if it's going to respond or not respond. And if you don't respond, you switch to a different medication. Celexa and Wellbutrin is the ones that the studies that I know of. But so that's like 2 weeks as opposed to 8, as opposed to 8 weeks. So that's pretty cool. All right, that's getting to be pretty cool. Yeah. The functional MRIs, not enough yet to justify their use as far as differentiating between, bipolar disorder and say schizoaffective disorder. You can get that just on a history, and it's certainly not at the place where we can use them to judge treatment. So they're cool. You can use them because they're cool, but they're not really clinically applicable yet. They might be at some point. This is cool though. That might be actually becoming clinically relevant. So this is all from your text, all from your textbook. This is how you do an interview. This is sort of nice techniques. You establish rapport, why they come, what brings you here today. And we'll do a little bit of that coming up. Let's see how I'm going to. I'll stop sharing screens is what I'll do. And then you use that chief complaint to start your differential, their differential diagnoses. We already started some of that, I suppose. Then you move forward. Then you go to the detailed questions of the DSM-5. Vague or obscure replies, follow up on them. Kind of depends on your style. People have different styles. Some will have a very structured interview. They'll go through the clinical assessment sheet pretty formally. Others will kind of let it go, sort of have a conversation, keeping in mind where all these parts go. Okay, and set it in there. Let them talk freely enough to observe how they go and connected, open and closed questions. And you have to ask about difficult and embarrassing things. You have to ask about suicidal ideation, auditory hallucinations, all that kind of stuff, which could be uncomfortable at first. It'll be uncomfortable at first, but you'll get over it. Suicidal thoughts, and then let them ask questions. Okay, do they have any questions for you? And that that can go on. As part of my lecturing style, I try to give. There's the exit door or the doorknob phenomena, where you have this interview and you're talking about all this stuff, and the patient gets up and I'll even display. Patient gets up and goes to the door and says, "Oh, I've been suicidal for the past week or two. Is that something I should worry about?" And you kind of go, "Yeah. Yes, it is." So that's that'll happen. And I'm using that to be kind of silly, but I mean, probably what that is the person is uncomfortable with that. But as they're leaving, they kind of go, I probably should say that, and that's what that is. And then a sense of confidence and hope. Most of these disorders can get better. Are they cured? Are they, what is really cured, right? I mean, what does that even mean? So they're chronic illnesses, but people can go into remission. And that's what you have to think about, is the idea of remission and relapse. I just want to check something here. Yeah, it looks like everybody's hunky-dory. Okay. Back to there. I'm trying to keep on top of all that. So now here's some common symptoms. Again, these are all listed in the textbook. If you don't have the textbook, you can just use these for now. Fixed and false beliefs. Severe complexity, etc. How are they going to act on them? Now, these can be varied a lot. So some delusions are pretty, they might be happening, they just aren't. So that people might think that their spouse is having an affair on them, even though they're together like 24/7. There's no way they can have time for an affair. It'd be like having an affair in the age of COVID. You're never like out. So, or they might, I have a set number of stories, right? They might have a delusion that the mafia is after them. The mafia wants to kill them. Now you have to be careful, because some of those might be true. The story there of the mafia was after me. It was in an emergency room, and the mafia's after you. Really, you're delusional. Call up psych. Psych goes down, interview him. And he goes, the mafia's after me. And sure enough, the Secret Service shows up at the ER and takes him away because the mafia was after him. He actually was on a witness protection program, and they had to, change his identity and all this kind of stuff. It's pretty funny. Sometimes the mafia really is after you. But it might be that. There was another one. Jehovah's Witnesses are wanting to kill me. The Jehovah's Witnesses are stalking me, and are they going to act on them and really believe them? Then that's now becomes more of a dangerous delusion. Overvalued ideas. That's just more of a, I really believe this is true. Well, do we have a delusional society where Hillary Clinton is running child prostitutions out of pizza parlors in Washington, D.C.? We may be having a delusional society. This has happened before. It's happening again, in my opinion. So different types. What's that?
I'm sorry, I have a question on that last slide.
Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between, or I guess, severity and global severity?
Oh, yeah. So severity is like you have a single delusion. No, actually, I'll pull up the actual thing here just to make sure I'm getting you on the right track. Prefrontal cortex. Fixed false beliefs. May or not be influenced by them. Persistent for weeks to months. Questions about the beliefs. Yeah, severity, delusion, global severity. Account their persistence, how complex they are. Because if the Jehovah's Witnesses are after me, it's just pretty one line. They're after me via the movies that I see, via the fillings in my teeth. That's getting more and more complex, and how much they act on them. So that's the severity is just how much do they believe them? How severe is how much do they believe these things? And then global is it just this one part of my life, or is all my life kind of surrounded by these delusions? Well, another one, maybe to illustrate that, might have a person that believes their grandchildren are being sexually abused. They kind of think that, but they have this delusion, but they don't really act on it. Or they're obsessed with the grandchildren being sexually abused. They have insights, kind of psychic insights of the abuse happening. They will call Child Protective Services and the sheriffs about them being abused, whereas all along they're not abused. That last one is very severe, very global, as opposed to, it kind of wants to be like worry they're abused. Is that kind of getting at it?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. And please ask questions. That's one thing that I worry about with this format is people don't ask questions. Unpardonable internal punishment for some sin that you did. Maybe you, I don't know, stole something from a store as a child, and now you're psychotic about that. You can't get rid of it. Grandiose, responsible for events not related to them. People, it's kind of interesting. People have the feeling that they're the cause of they're the cause of 2020. That's whoever is to blame for 2020 should really be medicated. But maybe they're causing the hurricanes. That somehow their thoughts are influencing the weather patterns in the Caribbean. Grandiose, I think I'm the next, Messiah, the next savior of the planet, or I'm the most powerful man in the universe. And religious, I'm obsessed with my religion, and it's again, they have these in here. Preoccupied with false beliefs of religious nature, exists in the context of conventional religious system, such as Second Coming. So this is where, religion ones are kind of difficult because where do you separate a religious delusion from, a religious belief? So the other thing about your textbook that's really cool, they have questions on what you can ask to get at these things, those particular questions. Semantic, tactile, and body dysmorphic. So body dysmorphic is you think there's something wrong with you, with your hands, with your nose, your eyes, when really there's just not. Ideas of reference. Ideas of reference. They believe that with insignificant remarks, statements that are their special meaning to him or her. So in the movie Beautiful Minds, he thought, the character thought that he was getting all these messages from the newspapers and whatnot, that they were for him. That's ideas of reference. And they'll see things that are just sort of common out there and think they're yours. Being controlled. I had a person who was controlled by a kinescope in his chest. Kinescope, by the way, is an old type of movie projector, but he had a kinescope in his chest. And then the mind reading. Others can read your thoughts. Kind of similar to mind reading, sort of the opposite, perhaps you could say, is thought broadcasting. I can broadcast my thoughts, directly to you. My thoughts, you can hear my thoughts. Thought insertion is someone can put thoughts directly into my mind, and directly, not with by saying, think of a horse. You're all thinking of a horse now, but I didn't insert that thought. I suggested it. I didn't just and now you have a thought in there. The thought withdrawal, just like it sounds. People can pull thoughts from your brain. Various types of hallucinations, auditory and sensory modality. Most of the time it's auditory and visual. Can be other ones, olfactory, gustatory, tactile. Where are they here? Tactile hallucinations. People have bugs under their skin, right? They'll kind of feel like there's something going wrong there. That's often connected with substance use disorders, withdrawal in particular. People who are withdrawing from alcohol will feel like they have spiders under their skin, which is kind of gross. If you have someone, I use this as an example, olfactory hallucinations. If you have someone who's been psychiatrically normal and now at age 40 come in with, I'm really smelling very weird things. There's strange things. That's time for a brain scan. Okay, you're now ruling stuff out because that could be like a tumor. That could be a brain tumor. I believe just mainly brain tumors that can present by olfactory hallucinations. Hypnagogic and hypnopompic. Hypnagogic is going to sleep. Hypnopompic is waking up. And probably many of you have had those where you just you hear your name or something just as they're falling asleep, and then it wakes you up. And illusions. Yesterday in memory and cognition, I gave an example of this is visual perception. You think it's one thing, but it's actually a different. So this, again, I collect stories. People have had me before in class. This is the case. So I had an illusion yesterday morning where I was feeding the dogs, and that's because they're very sloppy dogs. They have food all over, so picking up the food, putting it in their dog dish, and I saw what I thought was some fuzz kind of on the ground behind the dog dish, and so I was going to clean up the fuzz. Well, that fuzz started moving. That fuzz was a spider. Now, was I psychotic in thinking that spider was fuzz? No, I looked like it was poorly lit this morning, all that kind of stuff, and that was an illusion. It startled me, and I, squished the spider. So auditories, again, let's see, we're doing it right here. Yeah. For especially in schizophrenia, it's often a voice commenting on everything you do, sort of a running commentary. Voices can talk to each other. They can be quiet, they can be loud. You'll oftentimes see people with headphones on to try to contain the voices, have something else to listen to as opposed to the voices in their head. Angels, demons, people. Folks will see. There's lots of cases of this sort of thing, right? Where they saw the Virgin Mary coming out of the sky on the clouds and basically the flames from heaven. They're seeing it right now, or they're seeing gunships on Lake Helena, gunships that are coming to kill everybody on the land. This is the visual hallucinations. Disorganized behavior, clothing and appearance. They can just appear very strange clothing, very strange sexual behavior. Now, this gets kind of tricky, right? With strange sexual behavior versus if you're into that, and that gets where it can be kind of a clinical call. Stereotype behavior. The squeaky kind of adds to that, doesn't it? So that's very sort of typical. Look for this when you're out and about. Look for someone that that's walking down the street, kind of doing this or something like that. It's probably schizophrenia. So the more you can sort of do that, the more you can kind of sit up in my chair now. The more you can sort of look for this stuff in the real world, the more you're going to be able to recognize it. And it's just So people with autism will have stereotype behavior too, right? Maybe something like that. So that's actually a point. By looking at all this stuff, you're kind of putting this together. You're now getting a picture from the DSM-5 of what's going on with the case. Disorganized. This is where I'll try to have when I'm talking about something, and I try in the classroom, I'll go off on this, and now I'm just like a little picture in your corner, I would assume. But even though being a little picture in the corner, the Mariners are playing again. Which is they're losing. I can't believe the Mariners are again losing. That's derailment. Okay, so talking about giving a lecture, the Mariners, you're off the tracks. You've derailed. You now are swinging you're careening off the railroad tracks into the Carroll College. That almost happened for many years ago. Loose associations. That's where you might just loose associations might remind you of moose, which is kind of loose because it rhymes with moose, with the caboose, with the train that just derailed. That's all. The train that just derailed with the caboose, who had the person in it, who may have actually been a saint, which would be bad. Tangentiality. That's where it's like tangents, like a tangent, right? In geometry, sine, cosine, tangent. And we kind of go off on a tangent, and you kind of keep going off on a tangent, where you end up with the word tang. And the word tang was that the orange mix, which actually had nothing orange to it at all, but it was kind of tasty. And they used to give it to astronauts until the astronaut went, "Hello, astronauts!" And people think we didn't land on the moon, but of course we landed on the moon. It's the most ridiculous things. I can do word salad. I was told this. I got this. Let's see. Let me get to. I'm going to post on Facebook, and this is kind of funny. I'm sorry, I probably share too much, but I'm quite dedicated to my relationship. But there is a old girlfriend that we connect on Facebook. It's fine. She was nice, but I had no intention on connecting with her. But she did with me. It was kind of sad, actually. But so I did what I'm about to do, and she tried to interpret it. So I'm going to hit the middle word. Okay. So yes, we will is a great band of the course of course. We will was a great band of the course. That's word salad. So, it's actually fairly redundant word salad, but word salad nonetheless. So yeah, it's kind of cool that someone told me how to do this. In illogical, that's again sort of hard to do, and I don't think I can do it with Facebook even. But it just doesn't make sense. What they're saying just doesn't make sense. Now, what you'll see is, or hear, I guess in this case, is these folks will be talking to you, and they'll have appropriate grammar, which is really kind of interesting, right? That they have the noun verb placement is all correct, that kind of thing. So you'll be listening to them and kind of, I think they're making sense, but then you get kind of dizzy. It's like, no, that's not making sense. Yeah, so it's interesting that they have grammar, that the grammar remains intact. Tedious details, so very disorganized. Pressured speech is where you're not really shouting, but you are having some pressure into your speech. Distractible, that might be, there's my cup. Gosh, do I want to get more coffee? I never finished the third cup of coffee. I don't know why I even pour it. Clanging is like rap music. Clanging, banging. You might be clanging with the tanging, which is the fanging and the hanging, or with the clanging and the manging. Well, this would be clanging. Motor behavior. So what you're doing now, so let's review kind of what we're doing, right? So we had sort of these psychotic symptoms, we're having speech symptoms, okay, now we're having motor symptoms, and these go across all diagnoses. They're not necessarily specific to schizophrenia, they're not specific to depression, they go across different diagnoses. So these are the things you look for. So motor behavior, just stupor, you just go to, and that might be depression, might be schizophrenia. Rigid, you just hardly move. There's a thing called waxy flexibility, where people who are basically catatonic, and you can move their arm up and it'll just stay there. Again, excitement, they're just kind of moving all around. Increased activity, posturing and mannerisms. You'll see, I don't know if I can, this might be kind of silly, but I'm gonna try to do this. Where people have a posture, they're kind of sideways like this, and it might be having a posture sort of like this, and it'll be there for long periods of time. If we ever get to a place, which we will, it might be a couple of years, but we will get to a place where we have conferences again. Go to some of the mental health conferences, because people with schizophrenia go there, and you'll see them doing that, which is just that's what they do. It's people with schizophrenia. Increased activity, they're moving all around, they're jumping around your room. It could be mania, could be ADHD, could be agitation, could be drugs, could be all those different things. But it's a symptom that's consistent with those. Versus retardation, where they're not moving at all. Affective symptoms, flat facial expression. Do they make eye contact? Eye contact is something you need to keep in mind with native populations. I think mainly Plains natives. I'm not sure about that, but they'll have they won't make eye contact. It's considered rude. So they might be talking and they'll look up at you, and they're talking some more and look up at you. That's their culture. It's not anything besides their culture. Mania and anhedonia. Lability is they're happy, they're sad, they're mad, it's harder to do here. It sort of is. Attentional symptoms, inattentive, hyperattentive. They're just focused on this one thing. They can't not look at, in this case, the letter B on my keyboard. I just have to look at that letter B. It has special significance for me, that letter B. Maybe it's like B as an existence. Social symptoms, are they well groomed or not? Do they go to school or not? Work? Do anything fun? Do they have any interest in sex or a lot of interest in sex? In relationships. So these are all social symptoms. So again, you're kind of getting this picture. That's the idea. You're getting this picture of who this person is. Sleep is another big one. They don't sleep at all. They wake up early morning awakening. That's a sign of depression. They'll go to sleep fine, but they'll wake up at 2:30 in the morning and can't get back to sleep. Appetite, are they hungry all the time? Or they have no appetite? Various anxiety, worry, etc. And of course, suicidal thoughts. Some people will have suicidal thoughts where they're just, I'm sorry, Suicidal thoughts were, yeah, I wish I was dead. I wish I was dead. I just don't know why I'm alive. And they have no plan. Then they've wished they were dead for years. So that's one thing. Now, they're still at high risk for suicide, mind you. Okay? That puts them at a risk. As opposed to, I have a gun in my car. I'm going to go out and have a fifth of whiskey, going up in the woods. You won't never know where to find me, and shoot myself. That's a lot more concerning. We don't have good screens. Actually, here's a problem. Going back to screening, back to the reliability and validity. For screening for someone's suicidality, we have a lot of false positives, meaning if we had some kind of paper screen or whatever, interview screen, it's going to show a lot more people are suicidal than who actually are. So it's a problem in screening for suicide. We have a lot to do on that. All right, how are we doing here? Okay, let's go a little bit longer than usual if you're all right with that, because I want to get to some of these.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, please.
That's all right. So you were talking about it earlier, and kind of like the conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But I'm kind of curious because it seems like over the last few years, especially, a lot of it seems like especially in American culture, conspiracy theories have become mainstream. Mm-hmm. And they continue to grow, and it doesn't matter how much science is backed up, or how much evidence is shown. It seems people are continuing to do this, whether it's flat Earth, anti-vax, or Hillary Clinton running a pizza sex cult, and so I'm just kind of wondering what's happening and why things like that are becoming so mainstream, and it's this run away from actual evidence-based thinking.
Well, I think, and I'm going to speculate some here, so a bit of a speculation flag. First off, this happened before. These happen in societies, so this is not a new thing. For example, I can't remember what, I think it was Eastern Europe, where there's an idea that you could be turned into a wolf. This was a social thing that people were turned into wolves. It's where the werewolf idea came from what I understand. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, there was this generalized thought that there's widespread satanic ritual abuse, that people were, killing babies and impregnating women to, rip the babies from the uterus, and, all this horrific stuff that never happened. But it was all unconscious. Okay, they had to recall it, repressed memories. What happened then, which I think is what's happening now, and I'm not sure about this. This is absolute speculation, so keep that in mind. What happened back in those days, late 80s, early 90s, was America Online. Quaint, right? But America Online. So now you're not having interaction with people, face to face. You now have this web here, and people are reaffirming their beliefs. And the therapists kind of fell into it, because therapists are kind of going, yeah, man, we're like fighting Satan. How cool is that, right? Fighting Satan. And so that grew. Now I think it's even more so because and again, I try not to wax political on this stuff in my classes, but we have a charismatic person who loves to divide things up. This is how he gets off. This is what he does. So he feeds that. You have people who are quite devoted, and devoted would be the term I would use. And you now have this incredible echo chamber of Facebook and Twitter and all that sort of stuff where, yeah, I believe that. There's social psychological processes where people want to go along with the crowd. You probably remember the one where they had the three lines, right? 3 lines, and the Confederate people would say, this line's the longest, but it's not. And about, 2/3 of the people go, yeah, I guess it's not. Or I guess it is. It's that phenomenon. Okay, so now you're reinforcing each other's belief systems, and anything that goes against that belief system must be a conspiracy against that belief system, kind of by definition. So the people, this with COVID, well-placed obscenity here, please forgive me, but this fucking blows my mind away. It's like, God. So I keep track of this because it's just something I worry about, and it's now the third leading cause of death in the country compared to 2017, 2018 data. That's the third leading cause. So I post that. People will say things. Well, now they're saying cancer and heart disease is COVID. They're not doing that. But people have a desire that this isn't happening. They're getting fed off other people that this is this hoax. It's not really happening. It's just the common cold, and that gets reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. People reinforce it. It becomes a delusional system within a society. And again, please forgive me for going here, but it becomes kind of like a religion. Okay, I mean, religion is based on faith, and which is great. I have nothing against faith. That said, if you have something that's based on faith, anything that contradicts that goes against your faith and therefore cannot be true. Okay, I believe this. I mean, look at all these signs. I mean, lots of people are dying. That must mean nobody's actually dying, right? So I really think that's what's going on. It's I apologize if I'm getting off track here, but I think it's really, really concerning. People will believe both, that masks do not keep the virus out, but they do keep carbon dioxide in.
I know, that one blows the mind.
It's like the viruses are very, very small, but a lot bigger than a carbon dioxide atom or molecule, actually. So it's like they believe both of those things with no cognitive dissonance whatsoever. And their opinion, this is my opinion. I don't care about your damn opinion. I mean, oh, and things like this Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the World Health Organization, they're making those numbers up. Those aren't real numbers. Why would they do that? Okay, come on. So, yeah, I think it's, and my apologies, my dear students, I apologize, but it's really a social determinant of illness here. Our belief systems around this are causing this to get worse. Okay, our belief system that it's just not that bad. Most people get over it. Let's open it back up. It's not. Yeah, it's really bad. So, I'm sorry.
No,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. How about if we let's do this. Let's stop the presentation.
yeah.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to stop this and stop recording.